I'm sorry for those of you at home. Oh, it was just okay. It was just okay. I am really excited to introduce a colleague that I don't get to see in person very often, but who helps me out a lot in what I do on a daily basis. As an SE who talks about Jamf School and talks to schools all the time, Ant has saved my butt a number of times. So he's not a local guy. He came here all the way from Manchester, and we were talking at dinner the other night about how he just goes by Ant. And we told him, when you're introducing yourself to people in America, like say, yeah, like the bug or like Ant-Man. Then we decided that he should be Ant-Man. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him up here so he can dazzle you with all of his knowledge. Big round of applause here. Let's go, let's go. That's, yeah.
Wow, I think that's the best introduction ever. Would you like me to just remind people about the Q&A? Yeah, so if you've got any questions, during the session, please open the JNUC app and use that. And then through the people at home, you should be able to ask questions in the session window. So I probably don't need to do this slide now. As you know, I'm Ant-Man, the little bug, and all that kind of good stuff. I'm a consulting engineer here at Jamf. So that means that I work with our education products and I work with our education customers. And today we're going to talk about Mac deployments in Jamf School. So I always feel things, when we discuss these kind of things, it's a little bit more relatable when we take real world examples that I still believe as admins kind of bug us a little. And one thing that I know that all of you do as school admins, hopefully only once a year, is take a Mac lab, wipe it, rebuild it, and return it to service. Now, for Mac labs, this used to be easy when we used to use imaging. But of course, that's dead and has been for a long time, and we all know that. But the thing that I miss, and I'm sure lots of other people miss as well, was just that simple feedback that we got, how simple it was to build that perfect Mac, take a stamp of that and put it on every single Mac in our lab, and then also have that really nice feedback. It was something really nice about popping your head into this lab over here and seeing those loading bars, knowing it's installing something and it's done something else. And I just crave that still. And it's just something that I feel is missing a little bit. I just like to know that this machine is ready and that the student can just walk up to it and use it. So, as we said, imaging is dead, but that problem of returning those devices back to service is still very much with us. So it comes to the end of the academic year or the semester or however frequently you have to do this. And we've got a really short time frame to work with any of these machines and get them back up and running again. Of course, we've got things like updating applications, making sure that those applications run with the operating system itself, new machines, or just generally new hardware. We have a printer that now needs to work with these Macs and all that kind of good stuff. And without imaging, this can become a massive, massive effort. That is, of course, unless we take advantage of the Mac management features that are available in Jamf School. So that's going to be our real-world example whilst we build out these features today. It's creating that really nice, simple return-to-work service where it's little hands-on time for the IT team, and by that I mean standing in front of the machine and typing loads of different things in and spending hours in front of the machines. And it'd be also really nice if we could perhaps get some of that visual feedback as well, so that we could just pop our heads into our labs and go, we know that that's ready to go. This one's still loading this piece of software here, and kind of get that warm, fuzzy blanket back of what we felt with imaging and all that kind of feedback. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the basics and then build upon that with specific Jamf School features. And then we're also going to bring in some third-party tools as well. So let's start with those basic pieces and look at how the MDM framework can help us and how Jamf School utilizes these. So in the years after imaging, Apple continued to add features to each macOS release to help us create and redesign our onboarding workflows. The thing is, they didn't do it all in one go, so sometimes it's hard to see how these piece together. One of the things that we're going to use with the workflow today is the erase all contents and settings, probably one of the best things that Apple gave us in this OS release. And essentially what it allows us to do is remove all the user data off the machine, but keep the OS intact, just like erase all contents and settings works on an iPad. It meant that we didn't have to download all those big operating systems just to get us back to the hello screen or that welcome screen. We didn't need to wait for all the time that it took to do that as well. And the best part of it is we don't actually need an admin person in front of the machine in order to wipe it. From the Jamf School console, you can see how easy it is to wipe a device. We simply select the Mac or Macs in that lab that we want and hit the wipe device command. As you see from this screen, there are some caveats. Your Mac has to either be a T2 or Apple Silicon Mac and be on at least Monterey in order to use this. And we can also choose some things like our fallback behavior, just in case there are any errors, we can stop it from actually wiping the machine fully as well. So there's a couple of options that we have here. So let's have a look at what this looks like on the device itself. So in a second or two, what you should find is that the machine reboots because we sent that wipe command via Jamf School. It will reboot into a kind of activation screen. Now, as long as that machine is plugged into Ethernet, and don't forget, we're talking about Mac labs here, so there's a good chance that they are going to be hardwired, I don't have to do anything further. Once it hits the activation screen, then the Mac will go away and talk to Apple because it's connected to the internet, activate, and then reboot one more time back to the hello screen or the region, select your region location kind of screen, basically back to factory settings. And remember, this is done by clicking one button in Jamf School. I had to send an admin to the machine. Now that's all very good and well, but as we know, a fresh build is only part of the process. It's currently got no apps, it's currently not ready for our students, it's just part of the process. So another feature that was released with one of the OS's post-imaging was the Auto Advance feature. And this was Apple's way of giving us that really, really quick kind of workflow to get from that welcome screen, that hello screen, all the way through to either a user creation or a login screen, depending on what it was that you wanted. Again, though, it relied on the fact that your machine was plugged in via the Ethernet. Now, we had to have that for the last stage, and we're talking about Mac labs, so there's a good chance, like I say, that's not going to be a problem for us, but it's important that I point that out again, right? As long as these are all connected, this workflow just happens all on its own. So again, it's part of the setup of the machine, so it is done via the automated device enrollment profile, which means you have had to connect your Jamf School up to School Manager. And it's configured using the ADE profile as well. It's really simple to do. We call it zero-touch deployments in Jamf School. You select the language and location that you want the machine to set up into, and off you go. Now at this point, again, thinking that this is going to be for Mac labs, there's probably a good chance that we're going to put a local admin on the account because that's still going to be useful for us in our Mac lab situations. And it definitely is going to be something that we're going to use as part of this workflow too. So we'll do that as part of this process at the same time. So looking at that process now on the machine, notice how the mouse does not move from that top corner. Might be a little bit hard to see, but I can tell you it absolutely doesn't move from that top corner there. And you can see these screens are just progressing all on their own. It's the screens that you're familiar with, so it selected the language and location we chose in the profile. It's gone away and enrolled itself because remember, we're using automated device enrollment. It will also enroll into Jamf and pull down all of the settings that you've configured, including that local admin, which means we haven't had to create an account. And when I'm ready, I can use that local admin to sign in should I need to. Okay, so far we've erased the Mac, we've advanced through all of the screens, we've enrolled into Jamf School thanks to automated device enrollment. And as I said, it means that all of those applications, settings, and all that kind of stuff that you've configured in Jamf School has also been pulled down in the background. But that process that we've just seen there, how do we know that machine's ready? How do we know all those apps are downloaded? Do you think they probably have downloaded in that short amount of time? Even on your good Wi-Fi at home or internet at home, definitely not in school and definitely not when you've got 3 labs that are working, right? So what do we do here? Well, I've seen people just kind of go, hey, if we leave it overnight or if we kind of leave it for a couple of hours, maybe all of the apps are downloaded. Probably they'll be downloaded. We definitely don't want to be logging into each machine just to check things have downloaded, right? Or maybe we turn this on its head. What if a machine was sitting at that login screen and a student comes up to it and tries to log in? And then the apps that they need aren't there, the settings that you've configured haven't landed on the device yet, for example, right? How do you tackle that currently? sticky note on the screen, and as soon as the aircon just blows it off, it falls off, or you stick a sign on your screen and the student just comes off and peels it off because they want to use it anyway. It's not the best way to do it, right? But these are kind of things that I know I've done in the past. So we've used the basics to quickly and efficiently wipe the Mac and enroll into Jamf School. Let's now look at the other things over MDM that Jamf School has to offer to macOS. And this is really how we can open the door to third-party tools. So for people that are in the room, just a quick show of hands, who is using scripting and package deployments in Jamf School today? Good. That's a good number of people because a lot of people don't even realize that these features exist in Jamf School. Okay? So let's just go over what they are. So Jamf School has a scripting module, and that now allows you to run custom Bash and Apple scripts remotely and centrally from Jamf School. Once the scripting modules are on the device, these scripts that you will create are executed securely and remotely, which is fantastic. And the thing is, these can be triggered at multiple different times as well. So it could be from a one and done kind of situation, just one script you need to run one time, through to when the machine logs in, for example, or maybe there's a schedule every day you want to run a script. We can choose this. And if you have scripted before, you'll know that basically your imagination is the limit, is the sky when it comes to what you can do with settings when you start to script. The next thing that we have is the package deployment, or as we call it in Jamf School, in-house macOS apps. Now that's a mouthful, isn't it? So from now on, I'm just going to go package deployment, but when I say that, I mean in-house macOS apps, just for clarity. And that allows me to centrally and easily deploy apps that are perhaps outside of the Mac App Store, third-party tools, or build my own custom packages with something like Composer. And of course, up until Tuesday at the keynote, if I wanted third-party apps outside of the App Store, this was probably the way I did it. App Installers got announced on Tuesday, of course, so that's really going to help things as well when it comes to these kind of workflows. So with those kind of two features, it allows us as admins to start to take advantage of the third-party tools. The Jamf Marketplace is a great place to start to look at some of the tools. And the two tools that we're going to take advantage of today as part of our workflow are going to be Installmator and Swift Dialog. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, and I'm sure that everybody does, but Installmator is a tool that simplifies and automates deployment of a whole bunch of tiles, applications. And the best part is we don't need to maintain those packages. We don't need to maintain them and upload them ourselves. It's all done through Installmator. The latest version is always installed, and we can even control updates to some degree with this too. And then we have Swift Dialog, and that's a beautiful, simple little application that creates dialogues and feedback screens for users via a script or command line. If you've been listening to what I was saying about what we're trying to achieve, you're suddenly going to start to picture what we're going to use Swift Dialog for, I'm sure. So let's enhance our return to service workflow by using these advanced Mac management features in Jamf School, package deployment and scripts, and then the two tools that we've just spoke about. So what does this workflow look like? How do I go about it? The first thing that I need to do is upload Installmator directly to Jamf School using the package deployment ability. Or I could customize that package with something like Composer to add additional resources, maybe things like images or icons, something like that. But once you've got that, you upload it to Jamf School. The next is we need to create a script that's going to trigger to start this workflow. It's going to tell Installmator what it is that we want it to install, and it's also going to give all those commands to Swift Dialog to give us that feedback that we want. Now, the script itself took me a little while to build, and it suits my needs, and it shows kind of a really simple example. But like I keep saying, scripting's only limited by your imagination, so you could go crazy with some of the stuff that you wanted to do. Once I've got those two pieces in place, I just need to scope these two resources into the Mac labs, or the Macs in my lab that I want to deploy, along with any config profiles and Mac Store apps that you would normally want to install. Okay, don't forget to scope those as well. That's really important at this point. Then once you've got all that ready, you simply use those two workflows we've already spoke about. So we erase the device, we go through Auto Advance, and this whole process kicks off. Now, since we've already done the erase all contents and settings and the auto advance, let's pick up on where we left off. So we're logging in currently with that admin that we used in the automated device enrollment profile. And when we've logged in, you'll see that some of those profiles we've also scoped in have started to land as well. But it's also installing that Installer package that we've asked it to do. And the script in the background is also triggered. Now, what I really like about this is that the script that we've used calls our first tool, Installer, to go away and download and install our second tool, Swift Dialog. So there's some kind of cool inception going on there, right? We use our first tool to download our second tool. I think that's a pretty cool thing. So what you see on screen now is Swift Dialog. You can see that we've got it in full screen. Remember what I said about what if a student walks up and sees the machine, tries to use it? We use the sticky notes that fall off and everything. That's now not a problem for us because this screen is locked. Full screen, the student can't do anything to the device until it's ready to go. So you'll see it suddenly starts to populate with a software list. Again, this has been triggered by my script. But everything that we can see here from all of the wording, icons, the list of apps, the status of what's been installed, all that kind of stuff is completely customizable. Now remember what I said when we said about uploading Installer? I said that you could customize the package to include icons and images. This might be a reason that you want to do it. So instead of having that little orange swirly kind of icon there, maybe you'd put a school icon there. So you'd package that up with your Installer so that the resource was on the device when it got to this stage. So there's a whole load of things that we're doing here in terms of, you can see that some of the software is still installing. You can see what's installed. Imagine, if you're the IT admin again with perhaps multiple labs that you're installing or kind of deploying at that time, you can quite simply just pop your head in, go, I can see that 10 of the machines are, 20% through, go into another one, see that these ones are 50% through, and then just carry on doing the other things that you're going to be doing during the end of the semester. Because it's not just going to be your Macs that you're looking for. Let's face it, you've got all these other jobs on. But it's just these really nice indicators back to us that these things are going on, they're successful, they're not successful or anything like that. Now at this point, it looks like Installer is finished installing the software titles that we've asked it to. But of course, the things that are outside of the App Store aren't going to be the only things that we install, right? We are still going to use App Store apps for sure. Yeah? And of course, with app installers, we'll probably use some things from that as well going forward. Now, with a little bit of work, and remember how I said that scripting is limited by your imagination, with a few extra lines of code, what I did is I went and populated those apps that I knew I was installing via VPP, and basically just to look to go and see if they exist in the applications folder. Because if they do, that means they've been installed. So not only can I install things through this and give feedback, I can check to make sure my VPP apps are also installed and give my feedback there. If they weren't installed, it would just wait until they were. So it's a really, really nice thing to do. So it kind of looks like our build is complete. And again, if I was that IT admin running from room to room, it'd be really nice to be able to see that this is finished. So it's kind of like a little extra touch. I also scripted one last screen that said, hey, I'm finished. Okay, you can use the machine now. This is really nice. If we were to then go away and look in the system settings, you'll also see that there's a whole load of profiles that have landed. So although we weren't monitoring that as part of our deployment window, when we're having all that feedback, we know in the background all the settings, all the config is there. So at this point, this is a complete build. We've got all the apps we need, we've got all the config that we need. And we had all of that feedback as part of that process, the stuff that we wouldn't normally get, right? We know that these apps have been installed, we know everything's ready to go. Now, I keep talking about Mac Labs because that's the situation that we said we were going to talk about, but I'm sure you can see if this was a teacher device, how this could potentially help with them as well, guiding their own, their own deployment of their device if they signed in with their account instead of a local admin account, for example. Now, this is pretty good if you're not doing this kind of workflow already. Okay, it gives you that feedback that you need. And if you're not using the features of scripting or package deployment already, I really suggest that you do. It's definitely, this kind of workflow is definitely 100 times better than just waiting for a few hours and hoping that everything's installed. However, it could be a little bit better. So first off, we have to actually log in to kick off this workflow. which in itself is just, hey, it makes sense. I want to provide that feedback. So I need to be in the user space in order to do that. But it comes with its own challenges, right? Because what if you as an admin forgot to log out once everything was complete and a student came up? Student now has admin access to your machine because I just forgot to log out, as an example. There's other things that you've got to worry about as well, especially if you were having some kind of secure token file vaulty kind of workflows. If this was a one-to-one machine, the first user that you want to log in is the user of the machine, not the local admin, because that's going to cause you all sorts of weird workflows you need to get around. So the fact that we log in with that local admin could be a bit of a problem as well. Then there is the fact that there is a local admin on the machine, full stop. Because we're logging in with that local admin, we need to have a password that's kind to humans. And by that I mean something that's fairly easy to type, because we're going to type it into every computer to log in. And it's the same through all of our computers because it was set via the ADE profile. Now, it only takes for a student or a teacher to get hold of that password, and they now have access to all of your machines. And they'll remember it too, because you put a memorable password in there, because me as an admin need to remember the password, right? And then finally, it's that script itself. Are you comfortable with scripting? I'm not. Honestly, I'm not. This took me a few days to do. But if you were into scripting, it probably would take a few hours. I mean, I've got colleagues in this room that will blink and it'll look like this. Okay? I used our good friend Google search to do some of the things that I wasn't quite sure what I was doing here. But as you'll be able to see from this screenshot, this syntax that I've got here, this is just the syntax I need to put in to be able to say, this is the app I want to install, this is where the icon is, this is the text that I want to display. And of course, if it's not the right syntax, it then doesn't work the way you want it. And like I say, can you script? Is scripting something that's good for you, or is your team, is there somebody that can do this? Then you've got the other problem of this script also then contains all of the logic to go away and do the thing. So it only takes me to slip and delete one character, to add a character, to delete a line or whatever, and the whole script then just doesn't work. And of course, you've then got troubleshooting, what if it needs updating. Like I said, you need to be invested in this. It's a little bit work to start with, and you need to keep it up to date. Now, this is about 300 lines. Again, I bet somebody could half the amount of lines that you needed if you could code better than I could. But its point is, it's still something that's an upkeep, right? You've got to keep on top of it. Now, like I say, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the workflow that I've just shown you. I'm trying to say exactly the opposite. You should be kind of using these kind of workflows in Jamf School. It's absolutely possible, even if you weren't quite sure that it was. I'm just pointing out that there's some things that would be great if we could do them a little bit better and if it could be improved. Like I say, don't let the scripting put you off. Go away and earn your badge at the Google Academy of Searching degree, because that's all that you need, right? But at Jamf, we do speak to all sorts of customers, and in some cases, one or maybe multiple of those things that I said could be better are specific blockers for their environment. That's kind of where the consulting engineering team comes in, the team that I'm part of. We're kind of here when those technical blockers come up, and our job is to unblock them and kind of just get the job done. Now, I'm super lucky to work with some really, really clever people on the consulting engineering team. And whilst they've been doing custom engagements with specific customers, they've been able to build tools to help with these kind of things we've just seen here. Now, I want to be really clear, because I'm going to share some of these tools with you. This isn't the same as what we saw in the keynote and that onboarding experience that's coming with Pro. One, this is for Jamf School, but two, this is just a very different experience. So the tool that I want to share with you today, that one of our consulting engineering team built as part of one of these custom engagements with our customer here, is something called Setup Manager. Now, like before, Setup Manager is designed to help onboard or return a Mac back to service, whilst giving the user that feedback like we saw before. Setup Manager is a single package that you upload to Jamf School in the same way as you did with Installmator, in the upload macOS in-house app thing. The difference being, it's managed completely by a configuration profile, not a script. So if you're not familiar with scripting, we've just taken that away. Simply done by a config profile. And that's great on a few different levels. First of all, because you don't get to see any of the code for it to do the thing, because that's in the package, I simply can't break the deployment by accidentally deleting a line or a character like I could in a script, because I don't see any of that logic. Secondly, when it comes to that syntax, remember how I showed you it had to be, a certain order of the app, the icon, and then the text. Well, config profiles are super simple. You use them every day with MDM, right? You are only able to use a key pair. It's super simple to use, so it makes it really, really easy to use. So, I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay? It's pretty cool. I'm going to say it's pretty cool. So, remember, Setup Manager, we've created for specific customers and their specific needs. So, we did the whole erase all content and settings thing before, so we're not going to start there. We'll start right here. One thing that we haven't got here, though, is the auto advance. We've not turned auto advance on, but that will become super clear why not in a second. The first thing we do is we step through enrollment. So there's things that we're familiar with, right? Language location, all that kind of good stuff. Connect it up to Wi-Fi if you haven't already, and go away and enroll the device. It does all the things that you expect it to do. It's going to go away and talk to Jamf School, enroll into Jamf School. And then obviously all of the commands start to go down to go and do various different bits and pieces, including going to install Setup Manager. We land then on a screen that's familiar to us. We've, in this case, kept location services on. So far, so good, right? This is when the magic happens. Because within a few seconds, Setup Manager will kick in. Boom. Remember, we've not even logged into the machine yet. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is the About This Mac section. I'm going to be honest, I haven't done a Mac lab in a little while. But plenty of times when I did, they were iMacs. And I was asked to find the serial number and then put an asset tag sticker on the back. And I'd always forget, and at least back at the time, the serial number for an iMac was under the foot. So now I'm going to pick it up and I'm trying to remember this and write this down and stick the sticker on. So to have this on screen would have been a major, major benefit for me when I was doing those kind of things. So let's move on with the deployment. There's a couple of things that's going to happen. I'll try and step you through them. The first thing that we'll see is that we're going to run a simple terminal command directly by Setup Manager. So all we're going to do is do the time zone, but we've invoked that via Setup Manager using the config profile. Not a script, which is how we would normally do it. We've done this via Setup Manager and the config profile. Simple example, but it shows the power that it has here. Now I'm going to install some software outside of the Mac App Store. Again, this is what's really nice about this. It's using the same tool as we used before. Setup Manager uses Installamator to install that software. And of course, we've got all that feedback. We can see it here. We can see what's currently installing. And all those icons and all that kind of good stuff is just controlled by that config profile. So we're installing basically the same things I installed before, only last time I installed the separate Word, Excel, etc. I'm just doing it with the Office bundle this time. Once that's all done, you'll see that it then goes on to the next stage. And in this case, we're going to use something that, for this tool, we call a wait tile. And it's just a tile to give that user feedback. Much like last time, we're going to be installing things that are outside of the App Store, as well as our App Store apps. So just like before, why don't we just go and monitor to see if they're installed? We're telling the user that that's the case at this point. And then after that, we are going to just go away and check to see if those apps belong in the applications folder. Remember, we're not installing the apps at this point, we're just checking if they're there. So because these apps have actually been installed in the background whilst everything else was happening, because that's where they get the MDM command to say, go and install your BPP apps, the chances are it runs through that section really fast because it's been installing all along in the background. But the bit to point out here is that we can, of course, then monitor our app installer apps, the new feature we talked about the other day, but also any other custom packages I put in there. So here you'll see it says about wallpaper. Well, I packaged a custom wallpaper and I know where it's going to be installed. So I just go and monitor that file path to see if it exists or not. So we can monitor more than just apps here as well. And then finally, in this last section, I just, so far I've talked about the fact it can do command line, installer and then we can check for things as well. That's just because it's easy for me to explain that to you. You'll see in this last section, I use kind of a combination of them all. You'd create this workflow to work for you, right? You wouldn't necessarily have to go, I'm going to do an installer thing, check an app here, do that. It's up to you how you want to create that. And here I've got a combination of all kinds of things. Some of them are VPP apps, some of them are installer installs, some of them I'm checking that the Mac, in-house Mac apps, Jamf School feature has installed some stuff. And some of it's just wait tiles to say, I'm going to install Jamf Safe Internet. It's not installing anything. It's not checking the profiles on there. It's simply just informing the user I'm going to do it. So you could use this kind of thing to just inform the user of basically what's going on. So it looks like it's all finished up. And when we say continue, it will then release us back to the setup assistant, which means if you did want the user to set up other things like Touch ID, for example, they still could. Now, as part of this deployment, I also deployed Jamf Connect. Okay, now if you are still binding your machines, we probably should send you to another session that tells you why you shouldn't still be doing that and boot it out the door. But let's just say that you were. At this point, you could have bound your machines as well. So you would be sitting at a screen where a user could log into the device. In my case, I'm using Jamf Connect. And that takes away two of the other problems that we had. Because I now have this on here, I don't need to know about the local admin. I don't need to know what the password is, because I'll never log in with that password. So that password could now be a huge alphanumeric password that's unfriendly for us to know, because I don't need to log in with it. So we've solved that problem. Because I also don't need to log in with the local admin to kick the whole process off, that means that if we were having those secure token and file vault workflows where the user needs to be the first person to log in, the first person to log in will be the user, because I don't need to log in to kick off the workflow. So we've also removed those two problems in this situation. Now, just for fullness, I'm going to sign in and show you that in the background, it's also installed all of the config profiles that we wanted it to do, so it's a full build. So I'll sign in with my user. Remember, it's the first time that anybody's ever signed into this machine that will create this account, right? Because we're using Jamf Connect. So it will go away and create the account, and you'll see things like my custom desktop that we've looked at, custom dock configuration with those apps I installed. And then, like I say, if we go away and click the system settings, we'll see all of those config profiles that have landed on the device. And I'm just doing this for fullness. If I was deploying this, I wouldn't log in to check this. I would know that it's installed through the console. I'm just showing you guys now that it's working. So we know that we could, once the device landed on the Jamf Connect screen, we were good, everything was all fine to go. We had deployed machines, and I didn't even have to log in. Awesome. So that's my example of how we could enhance a return to workflow service using the Mac management features in Jamf School, and also giving you a bit of an insight to what we do in the consulting engineering team here at Jamf. We create those custom experiences for our customers. We get the job done. Now, with in-house macOS apps, I said I wouldn't keep saying that, and I think I've tried to say it about 5 million times since then. We can upload vendor packages or create our own using Composer. With scripting, or turning on the scripting module, it means we can create custom scripts to really get in-depth workflows, and we can execute them remotely from the Jamf School console. And then we can take advantage of things like third-party apps in the Jamf Marketplace or GitHub or all of those other good places that we get these third-party tools from. And then finally, it's something that we haven't covered today, but I highly recommend you explore, is the Jamf School API and how that can further automate and enhance your workflows. So thank you very much for listening. I'm pretty sure there'll be some questions, but I also just want to point out that you could contact me as well in LinkedIn afterwards if you needed to. I'm on the Mac admin Slack as Ant Darlow. That onboarder workflow, you know, the script that I was talking about, if you wanted to check out how bad my code is, you can absolutely do that because I've made it available on GitHub. Yeah, have we got any questions?
All right. Well, we have a couple of questions in the chat, but hopefully if you have any more, be sure to add them to the Q&A. So I'm going to save one of them for last because it's kind of funny. Let's see. Does enable location services get activated during the auto enrollment? This question came in earlier, and I think you kind of answered it partway through.
Okay, so as part of the auto advance,
Yes.
the location services does not get turned on, I'm afraid. No, it
Yep.
doesn't. It defaults to the off. All the things that it skips kind of defaults to the most privacy-driven option.
Yep.
And the most privacy-driven option there is to not turn it on.
Correct, yep, got it. Okay, so someone asked if you could share your script, which you loaded up there, which is great. And let's see, how can one get into the beta for your awesome
That's
setup manager?
That's a really good question. I just want to point out one more time, right? This is a closed beta, and we have limited availability for this. This is something really that we would want people to engage the consultant engineering team and have a valid reason to get access to this. However, should you believe that you are that's a said candidate and a good customer for us to help with this kind of thing, as you can see, we have an email address up here that you can access and ask for permission to come into the beta. Remember though, limited availability.
And then I like this question about the scripting module in Jamf School versus Pro.
Yep.
And we know that there's differences.
Uh-huh.
Do we know if there are things on the horizon to improve that scripting module for Jamf School?
I think the answer is there's nothing that I'm aware of. And I think the thing that we need to consider is as Apple release their OSs and make things a little bit more difficult for vendors like ourselves to actually access things that we need, I think that we'll find that, and I'm just guessing and estimating here, that we'll find that the Pro kind of binary will be able to do less and less as time goes on as well. So I think that potentially we wouldn't want to invest any time to make it do anything different than it's currently doing, right?
Got it. And then the last question is Manchester in London, and are you related to the Art Attack guy?
I have a feeling that that's come from a colleague in the crowd, if I'm being completely honest.
I'm thinking yes. Yeah, that's it for questions.
Ah, cool. Thank you very much, everybody. That's great.